Ohio State, Notre Dame. It's a chance to win the college football playoff national championship. Who's going to take home the trophy? It's a locked on crossover. Stick around. We'll break it down for you.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We are one day away from the college football playoff national championship game between Ohio State and Notre Dame. And today is a crossover you have all been waiting for between Locked On Buckeyes and Locked On Irish. I'm your host, Jay Stevens of Locked On Buckeyes. And with me is Tyler Wojciak of Locked On Irish. And this is a big game, Tyler. We were talking about it before we hopped on the show here. Both teams have interesting paths to get here. Both teams have interesting quarterbacks that are leading these offenses. Both teams have coaches that are trying to do something that people are saying they can't do, but they both are in a spot to do those things on Monday night. Tyler, when I think about the quarterbacks, Riley Leonard's one of those guys that's been a phenomenal leader for Notre Dame this year. What has he done to lead the Irish this year?
He's just been unflappable. Like, it has not been an easy ride for him all season long. He came out and it looked great against Texas A&M. Now, he wasn't slinging the ball all over the field. Like, he struggled in the first half passing the ball, but I was thinking, okay, he's a little bit rusty, had been dealing with injuries for basically an entire year. This is his first live action, so I didn't really put too much stock into it. And also, Notre Dame was able to drive down the field and score late, and he had some big passes on that drive. So it started off great for Riley Leonard. Then the following week, Northern Illinois, by far his worst game of the season. Frankly, his performance is a big reason why Notre Dame lost that game. So then everyone was out on him, and then he had to slowly work his way back in the good graces of the Notre Dame fan base. And it took a while. Like I said, it was not linear whatsoever, but he maintained the same level of confidence and composure throughout. And I think he has developed significantly as the year has gone on. Like, he's been a threat with his legs all year long. He's Notre Dame's second leading rusher with 866 rush yards on the season. But as a passer, we started to see something change following the first bye week. Notre Dame started to air the ball out a little bit more, and you started to see, okay, maybe this guy can do both, right? He's not just a runner. He can throw the ball as well. And he's gotten Notre Dame to this point, and frankly, I did not believe that he would be able to do it after that loss to Northern Illinois. So credit to him for keeping that level of confidence in himself and this team, because he is a big, big reason why Notre Dame is even in this position.
He definitely is. And on offense, the Irish, just like other teams, have been hit by the injury bug. Both these teams, honestly, when you're playing 16 games in a college football season, you expect injuries to be a big piece of your story at this part of the year. But Notre Dame's injuries, even in this game, a day before the game, people are wondering what's going to happen on the offensive line or what's going to happen on defense. What's an update with the injury situation on either side of the ball?
Okay, so at left tackle, it appears that Notre Dame is going to start Charles Jagasaw. It would be his first start of the season because he was the projected starter going into camp. Then he suffered a torn pec in the first week of training, missed the entire season. The first action he got all year, he came in actually as a reserve guard last week against Penn State and actually fared pretty well. So all credit to him. But now he's going back to his natural position because Notre Dame's starting left tackle for the whole year, Anthony Knapp, suffered a high ankle sprain. So that's one move. At right guard, Rocco Spindler has been the starter. He's older, but he's been dealing with this ankle injury throughout the playoffs. He had to leave the game against Indiana, gutted it out against Georgia, had to come out against Penn State. And now I think they're going to try to give it a go with him. We'll see what happens there. Then on defense, they've been without their top two edge rushers, Jordan Botelho and Boubacar Traore, for pretty much the entire season. Botelho went out week 3. Traore went out in week 4. They managed to figure things out, but then they lost another NFL caliber player on the defensive line, Riley Mills, in that first round game against Indiana. So he's out as well. They're also playing without Benjamin Morrison, who I think is probably the most talented player on the entire team. He's a potential first-round draft pick in the NFL draft. He gave Marvin Harrison Jr. fits all game last year. So Notre Dame has been dealing with injuries all year long, so this is no different. But as I've said throughout this playoff run, you can't really make excuses when it comes to injuries, because now that the season is so long in college football, every team is going to be dealing with injuries to some degree in the college football playoff. This is just the new nature of college football.
It is a new nature, and it's weird that even to even think about a game being played on January 20th. Our entire lives, it's generally January 7th through the 10th, maybe, is when the national championship game has been played. Then all of a sudden you're playing January 20th. You got to figure it out. And I think both these teams, while battling the injury bug, they've been able to figure things out along the way. But I'm interested in some things you said about Marvin Harrison Jr. a year ago, because there's been a lot of talk about how Notre Dame is going to defend Ohio State's receivers. The receivers at Ohio State are really, really good. But Notre Dame's pass coverage has been great all season long. What do you think Notre Dame will do to kind of defend Ohio State's receivers on Monday night?
They're probably going to run more man than Ohio State has seen all season. I saw a stat out there that Will Howard has only seen man coverage just 19% of the time. And that's probably for good reason, right? When you look at Ohio State's wide receiving core. And Notre Dame is going to run man, but I think some people are exaggerating it slightly. Because if you look at the data, Notre Dame runs man coverage more than pretty much everyone else in the country. I think Purdue was the only team that actually ran man defense more. And I think we could all just look at Purdue and just kind of ignore them. They're an outlier. They're not a very well-coached team this year. But Notre Dame was second, and certainly they ran the most of anyone in the college football playoff, but they only ran it 55% of the time. So they do it more than anybody else, but it's not the only thing that they do. It's not like they're going to be just trotting out one-on-one coverage on Jeremiah Smith all game. They're going to do it sometimes, but they're probably going to try to disguise it as much as possible because that is one thing Notre Dame is exceptional at. It's disguising their coverages and their blitzes, and a big reason why is their defensive coordinator, Al Golden. He's got a ton of NFL roots. He has a veteran group, so that allows him to be able to do some different exotic things to try to confuse opposing quarterbacks.
It definitely does benefit Notre Dame and even Ohio State that they both have seasoned coordinators there on the defensive side of the ball. When it comes to Marcus Freeman, I remember the video that came out that was circulating around social media when they announced that he was going to be the head coach. Everybody cheered. Everyone was excited. And he has just taken this thing just straight charging every single challenge and has been very successful early in his career. When people doubted him, sometimes people are being very critical of him or very critical of Notre Dame. He doesn't matter. He doesn't care. He just goes about his business and makes sure that he is leading the team the way he needs to lead it. What do you expect from Marcus Freeman in this game?
I expect him to be aggressive, confident, ready to go. He seemed so confident during that Penn State game, even when things weren't going well. I think they had like 3 different on-field interviews with him, 1 before the game and then 2 during the actual game. And he never wavered at any point during that game. Like he had so much confidence in his team that they were going to pull it out and find a way to win there late. And he was right. Now, I think he recognizes the challenge going up against a team like Ohio State, his alma mater. He understands the task at hand, but it hasn't really been easy for him. Dating back to this year. Like I certainly had my questions about Marcus Freeman after that loss to Northern Illinois because that was inexcusable. But the way that he has had his team ready to go every single week, because after that loss, every single regular season game from there on out was a playoff game. Notre Dame could not afford to lose one more game or else they wouldn't make the college football playoffs. So I think that mindset, that edge, that tenacity to attacking every single game has carried on through the playoff. And I thought eventually maybe they would just get burnt out. Maybe they would get gassed. And during the first half of Penn State, it certainly looked that way. But then at halftime, he was able to reset the team, get them ready to go for the second half, and they were able to pull out that win. So I expect him to have that same level of confidence and aggression going into the biggest game of the year.
The Buckeyes defense is one of those defenses I've rarely seen in college football, from the ability to get down by the goal line and not go backwards. Then there's just their ability in any part of the field to be able to overcome various challenges along the way. What do you expect from this Irish offense on Monday night? Because my gut just tells me that the Buckeyes defense is going to be able to overcome anything, but that's me. Maybe Riley Leonard's going to lead this offense in a way where they found ways to make cracks in the Buckeyes defense to score 3, maybe even 4 touchdowns.
Look, man, I have so much respect for Ohio State's defense. As I started to really dive in for the preparation for doing my show, and I was watching some Ohio State film and some of their games this year and their defense. Like they had that one bad game against Oregon at the beginning of the year. And, they just gave up a lot of explosive plays in that game. It was very uncharacteristic of a Jim Knowles defense. But it reminded me of this scene in the movie Friday Night Lights when Gary Gaines, that coach, is like watching video of Dallas Carter and his wife comes in. He's like, baby, those boys are big. And I'm thinking like, that's kind of how I felt watching that Ohio State defense. It's not just that they're big, they're fast, they're relentless. They fly around the field. They have so many NFL guys like Caleb Downs, JT Tuimoloau, like so many great players on that defense. I think for Notre Dame, they're going to have to hit on some explosive plays. Like they're just not going to be able to maintain multiple like 75-yard, 10-play drives or anything like that. This defense is just too good. They're going to tighten up at some point. But I do think that Notre Dame can have some success if they bring in some misdirection and they just try to get their playmakers in space, because guys like Jeremiah Love, guys like Jadarian Price, and even Jordan Faison, the wide receiver, They are the caliber of athlete that could make a big play at any point in time. It's going to be tough sledding for the majority of the game, but if they can just capitalize on those moments where they get a one-on-one situation on the outside, if they can turn those into big plays, like Ohio State's defense, if there's 60 plays in the game, right? If Ohio State's defense wins on 56, but then Notre Dame has like 3 big plays that go for touchdowns, then that's the difference in the game. So I think that's how you got to look at it. Notre Dame has to hit on some explosive plays in order to put some points up on the board.
We hear from Notre Dame and what we can expect to see from Notre Dame on Monday night. What about the Buckeyes? Tyler and I will dive into the Buckeyes offense and defense next after the break. This message is brought to you by Prize Picks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players, and if your picks hit, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yes, that's right. 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks. Run your game.
All right, Jay, this Ohio State team we have seen in the playoffs looks completely different than the one we saw at some points during the regular season. I'm sure that they have been extra motivated after that loss to Michigan, but schematically, like on the field, what are the biggest changes you have noticed that has led to their success?
Defensively, they're getting more pressure on the quarterback, and they're finding various ways with different defensive fronts and different looks to get more pressure on any quarterback. Doesn't matter if it's an offensive line like Texas or an offensive line like Indiana. It doesn't matter who it is. They're finding ways to get pressure on you over and over and over again. I believe in the rematch against Oregon, there were 8 sacks, 13 TFLs. The Buckeyes have had 16 sacks in the playoff alone against Tennessee, Oregon, and then against Texas. That stuff's unheard of. But Jim knows kind of realized after the Oregon loss, we kind of have to re-engineer the defense, and it's worked out to, now I won't say perfection because there have been some issues here or there, but for the most part, it's worked out way better than anybody thought it was going to. In the middle of the season during a bye week, if you're going to say we're going to re-engineer a defense, you might expect a loss or 2. Only 1, and it was the worst game Ohio State's coaches have had all season long, but the defense wasn't the problem that day. They only gave up 13 points to Michigan. Outside of that, this defense has been, even in that game, they were phenomenal. They were elite. And their ability to get more pressure, and even later in the season, be able to get pressure with 4, and then Tuimoloau and Sawyer, they have changed their pass rush paths, which has been just dynamite for the Buckeyes defense. The biggest thing to me is just re-engineering the defense in the middle of the season and seeing the result right before our very eyes.
So is that a product of Ohio State blitzing more, or are they just simply winning those matchups on the defensive line?
Both. I think it's both. I think the blitzing more needed to happen from various angles because at first that's an easy way to generate more pressure. But then once Larry Johnson and Jim Knowles got kind of changed the pass rush paths of the pass rushers, you're starting to realize that it's hard for even a Quinn Ewers to kind of roll out a little bit, even if he's going away, going towards his left. It's not his comfortable side. And he's also doing things where he knows there's a guy right behind him because the path to the quarterback's a little bit different. These guys used to just run up the field and then run past the quarterback, which to me made me want to pull the little hair that I had in my head out because it didn't make any sense. All of a sudden, they're going up and then they're closing in at the same time. And against really good offensive tackles, these pass rushers are getting to the quarterback. They're getting home. They're breaking up numerous passes. And Knowles has gone away from blitzing as much during the playoffs. Maybe we'll see more blitzing in this game. I think due to the injuries Notre Dame has on the O-line, you might end up seeing more blitzing. But if you don't, I think Ohio State will be just fine.
So you brought up the injuries that Notre Dame has been dealing with. We talked about it in the first segment, but Ohio State has been dealing with some injuries of their own, specifically on the offensive line. They've had to reshuffle that unit multiple times throughout the season. But what other injuries is Ohio State dealing with going into the last game of the season?
During the last game against Texas, Denzel Burke didn't play in the second half. He had an upper, I believe, extremity injury, as Ryan Day called it. He is expected to go full strength and start against Notre Dame on Monday night. On the offensive line, no one else has really been dinged up. They've kept re-engineered things. They're rotating at guard. Luke Montgomery got his first start of his career against Texas, and he played like a guy that belongs on the starting unit for Ohio State. Jack Sawyer and Cody Simon, they're wearing what I call the J.J. Watt arm brace because they're just dinged up right now. Tuimoloau got a hurt ankle against Texas. He came back in the game and played very, very well. The nicks, the dings, those things are going to happen, those bruises. You talked about it. You're playing 15, 16 games in college football. That stuff is going to happen. And so outside of that, the Buckeyes have been pretty healthy. Well, there was that Will Howard big welt on his hand, on his left hand, when his hand hit the helmet of an opposing player. He's fine. He talked about it afterwards. He's fine. But I expect nicks and dings, and maybe somebody may go down. Maybe everybody stays healthy. I don't know. But in the 16th game of a season, which is what a game I think is going to be very, very physical, it wouldn't shock me if a guy or two on either side went down. But my gut says if somebody goes down, if they can go back in, they're going to, because this is for everything. It's what you play for. You want to end the game with a national championship trophy.
Yeah, I didn't even mention like Jeremiah Love and Howard Cross on the Notre Dame side. Those are two guys who have been dealing with injuries, but they're going to play, they're going to go, and they're going to give it as much as they possibly can because this is the national championship game. You don't have to be anywhere close to 100% to kind of ride that adrenaline, make some plays. But we've talked a lot about the stars today. We haven't really talked that much about Jeremiah Smith, but we will in a second. But guys like Smith, Caleb Downs, Jack Sawyer, Will Howard, JT Tuimoloau. Notre Dame fans are familiar with them because those are some of the biggest stars in college football. But who has been the unsung hero for Ohio State during this playoff run that more people should know about?
Offensively, Donovan Jackson, a guy that was supposed to be the starting left guard this year, missed the first couple of games due to an illness, came back, started left guard up until the backup left tackle went down. Starting left tackle went down against Oregon. The backup left tackle went down maybe a game or two later. All of a sudden, against Penn State, Donovan Jackson goes out to left tackle for the very first time, and that was the only game where he's given up a sack. I think maybe the only game he's given up a pressure. Don't quote me on that last part, but he has been, outside of Will Howard, the MVP of the offense, because without him, I don't believe Ohio State's here. I don't even know if Ohio State gets past Tennessee if Donovan Jackson is not playing the way that he is. Defensively, I would say Cody Simon is the heartbeat of the Buckeyes defense. He is playing the type of linebacker play Ohio State fans have been thirsty for a very long time. I mean, Ryan Day's has some really good players. The linebacker play under Ryan Day has not really been at Ohio State standard. All of a sudden, Cody Simon in his final year is playing like a man possessed in the very best way. His instincts are elite. His ability to spy quarterbacks has been really surprising at how good he is at it, and I do expect him to spy a little bit with Riley Leonard at some point throughout the game. If he is the only spy, cool. But I don't think Jim Knowles is going to only go with just one spy throughout the game. He's going to try to change things up and give different looks for Riley Leonard to kind of see throughout the game. But Cody Simon and Donovan Jackson, they've been great.
Ohio State has had the best wide receiving core in college football for some years now. Like once Brian Hartline took over, he made that room a juggernaut in college football. Last year, Notre Dame went up against Marvin Harrison Jr. Emeka Egbuka had a huge game, but the Irish actually held Harrison Jr. in check. He only had 3 catches for 32 yards. Now, granted, he did go down with an ankle injury at one point in that game, but now here they go with true freshman Jeremiah Smith, who might be the next Julio Jones, Calvin Johnson, whatever you want to call it. Would you rather have true freshman Jeremiah Smith, this version of him now, or junior year Marvin Harrison Jr.? You got to pick one of them for this national championship game. Who would you take?
I can't get that game, the last offensive play against Michigan, out of my head. And there are other plays where Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't finish routes. And it's rare that I even say this, man, because I love Marv. I watched his dad play my entire life when he was playing for the Colts. Jeremiah Smith is different. And I don't say that about a lot of guys out there. Jeremiah Smith is just different, and different in a way that he can do everything Marvin Harrison Jr. did and then some. And we're seeing it this year. Now, I don't really care about the numbers, and I haven't compared the numbers from Marv last year to Jeremiah Smith this year. And when you're playing more games, they're going to be skewed just a little bit. But Jeremiah Smith is just different. I didn't see many teams do what Texas did to Marvin Harrison Jr. a year ago. I know Notre Dame's pass coverage a year ago did some special things to Marvin Harrison Jr., but Jeremiah Smith is getting special attention. Jeremiah Smith is playing in a way that he looks like a savvy vet, a guy that's played 4 or 5 years in college football. He just got here. He literally just turned 19 years old, and he is playing this way from his run blocking ability to be able to attack any defense. It does not matter. He's at full strength all the time. It's weird, man, because I love Marv. Marv is so good,
Yeah.
but Jeremiah Smith is just different.
So when Ohio State is playing their best offensively, it's terrifying. Like that first half against Oregon, we were talking about it before. That's one of the greatest halves of football I have ever seen at any level. But it hasn't always been that way for Ohio State this season. They didn't look that great offensively against Michigan, certainly. Nebraska, I think you could even throw Penn State and Iowa in there a little bit as well. When Ohio State is struggling offensively, what are the biggest reasons why?
They shoot themselves in the foot, and they allow mental blocks to be formed in their head, and they struggle to get over them. I mean, look at the last game against Texas. I don't know how many drives off the top of my head that Ohio State shot themselves in the foot, or Travion Henderson punched to someone's neck. Unsportsmanlike 15-yard penalty. You had a false start. You had a holding on the same drive. Next thing you know, Ohio State's punting. You had an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty where Austin Serveld ran up and ran through a couple of guys that were trying to tackle the ball carrier. Maybe he heard the whistle. Maybe the whistle was blown. I don't know all of that, but I know it was enough that he did that got a flag. There have been mental blocks that have stopped Ohio State this year. That wasn't the issue against Oregon. That was the issue against Michigan. And if Ohio State avoids mental blocks that last the entire game, they're going to be fine. I have no doubt that if Ohio State, at some point, let's just say they do shoot themselves in the foot for whatever reason, and they struggle to get out of their own way. They showed last week that they can get over that very hurdle, where a month prior, they couldn't get over that hurdle. And so I think they've just shown growth and a lot of mental fortitude throughout this time period in the playoff that, yeah, we can have some issues. We can shoot ourselves in the foot, and maybe obstacles will be formed in our brain that will be hard to get over, but eventually they'll get over them. And I think on Monday night, let's just say Ohio State does shoot themselves in the foot, or there is a missed block or numerous drops. I think they'll find ways to get over those hurdles throughout the game.
It's a national championship, so there's plenty of pressure to go around. But I think it's fair to say that there's not one person who is under more pressure than Ohio State head coach Ryan Day going into this game. So how confident are you in Ryan Day to get the job done?
I'm very confident. I am very confident in Ryan Day's ability to adjust, Ryan Day's ability to push the right buttons, Ryan Day's ability to understand the moment. And the fact that he's already been here once, I don't want to let that get glossed over, that in the 2020 season, the weird COVID season that it was, Ryan Day took Ohio State to the national championship. Now they ran into a really, really good Alabama team, but he knows what it means and what it feels like to get there and to lose. Now, that was a beatdown, too. So it wasn't just a loss, a 5 or 10-point loss. No, that was a beatdown of an Alabama team. And so Ryan Day knows what it means to be here. He understands the path that it takes in a new format for the playoffs, but also the grind that this group of players has gone through with Ryan Day. He understands the moment. And my confidence in Ryan Day, just to be honest with you, it wasn't this high before the playoff. Even at the end of the regular season or during the regular season, I didn't have the belief in Ryan's ability to get it done in the national championship this season that I do right now. After the Michigan loss, there was a team players only meeting. Ryan Day was there, and it was a needed thing for the players for Ryan Day to get things off their chest, but to also make sure that unit understood what's next. It was everyone knew they were going to be in the playoff. Would they host or would they not host a first round game? That was to be determined. They ended up hosting, and this team used that moment and used that loss to start playing the Buckeye football everybody thought we would see all season long. And we have seen Ryan Day push the right button with coaches and with players throughout the entire playoffs. And I think he's going to do that once again on Monday night.
All right, I think we've covered all the key factors in this game. Now it's time for predictions. Who's going to be holding up the championship trophy on Monday night? That's going to be up next.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keep every game exciting. Plus, When you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. As our Locked On crossover rolls on with Locked On Buckeyes and Locked On Irish, the game is tomorrow, but here right now, we got our keys to victory. And Tyler, when I think about Ohio State going into this game, there's a lot of things Ohio State can do offensively, defensively, even on the special team side of the ball. This team has firepower all over the place. But Ohio State, like we talked about in the very last segment, one of my top keys for the Buckeyes in this game is they can't shoot themselves in the foot. This team is one, if they don't shoot themselves in the foot, if they stay out of their own way, I don't know if there's a team in the country that can stop Ohio State's offense, and we know what the defense has done all season long. Only one team has scored over 17 points against Ohio State this year. That was Oregon. They did it twice. That's just an odd thing to think about when thinking about you're playing 15 games, you play one team twice in that span, and that one team you played twice is the only one that scored over 17 points. I have a lot of faith in the defense, a lot of faith in the offense, but neither side of the ball can shoot themselves in the foot because Notre Dame is good enough and they're sound enough to take advantage of those moments if Ohio State starts to get in their own way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's pretty fair to say that Ohio State has the talent advantage when you consider all the injuries that Notre Dame is dealing with right now. And whenever that happens, I think for Notre Dame, you have to win the turnover margin. You could basically apply that to like every football game ever. Odds are whoever wins the turnover margin, it has a much better chance of winning the game. But it's paramount for Notre Dame in this game. I think they have to win that margin by at least one, probably two, to give themselves a good chance of winning here. And I think it's the great equalizer in a game like this. Notre Dame has been elite at that all year long. They're top in the country in takeaways. And then when they get those turnovers, they score. They take advantage of them. We saw that in the Georgia game. They caused that fumble right before the end of the first half and then immediately scored a touchdown. So as a whole, offensively and defensively, Notre Dame has to win the turnover battle. And I think for the Notre Dame defense, they have to rattle Will Howard early on. They cannot allow him to get into any sort of a rhythm. Like in that Texas game, he came out firing. The middle of the field was open and he was hitting it. He got in a groove and it looked like Ohio State was going to run away with it. Now, Texas made some adjustments on defense and they cleaned things up. But when you get that version of Will Howard early on, that Ohio State offense is extremely hard to stop. So I think overall, Notre Dame has to win the turnover battles. That's going to be a big burden on the defense. They've got to make some plays, but they also have to rattle Will Howard early on.
They definitely do. And I think another thing for Ohio State, don't try to force the run. It seems weird that Ohio State this year might have two running backs that could have two guys that have over 1,000 yards this year, and their run game really hasn't been up to Ohio State standards, or even the most efficient running game in the country, or one of the better ones even in the country. Excuse me. But Ohio State must find a way to run, but you can't force it. The fact that they came out against Texas and ran the ball as much as they did on the opening drive, and the first touchdown was a Quinshon Judkins very patient 9-yard touchdown run, was eye-opening to me because that really shocked me. I didn't expect to see that. Doing things you don't expect to see that's great. That may throw Notre Dame off, but don't force the run. You still need to run. Use those powerful weapons on the outside. The guys that are the ones that can torch Notre Dame from Jump Street. Henderson's one of them. Use them. Use those athletes to open up the run. Use the run to open up the pass. I think it's a recipe for disaster for Ohio State in this game.
I mean, that's what worked for Michigan. They basically dared Ohio State to run the ball. They put 7 guys in coverage, and they were like, try to run against a light box. Ohio State took the bait, and they just couldn't get anything going up against a Michigan D-line, who is clearly one of the best in the country. But on the other side of the ball, for Ohio State's defense, what do you think are the keys to the game for them?
Keys to the game for the Buckeyes defense, do what you've been doing all season long. That sounds very weird to say, and maybe it sounds like I'm just an Ohio State homer, but what we've seen from Ohio State's defense, even if you look at the second half of the year and then the playoffs, what they've been doing works. Don't go away from it. If you have to blitz a lot to get pressure, do it. But we've seen Ohio State do that in the second half of the year and had a lot of success. If you're going to rush 3 or rush 4 and keep everybody back, cool, do it. But do what you've been doing that works. You already have a winning formula. You already have an elite formula. Don't go away from what works. Jim Knowles is not afraid to try different things in the playoff that he thinks will work in a certain moment. It worked in the goal line stand against Texas at the end of the game. It wouldn't shock me if Jim Knowles pulls out a new trick or two during this game, but that's what works. When I say what works, it's not just do the same old thing. It's Jim Knowles pushing the right buttons and maybe pulling something out of his bag that he's never used, but he knows it will work right here. Just do what works. It sounds weird. I'm not talking about a player or two, just in totality. Keep doing the same thing, then the chips will fall where they may.
Yeah, sometimes when you get to this point, the biggest key is don't change anything, right?
Yeah.
Don't need to fix it if it ain't broke. So I would say for the Notre Dame offense, they have to win on first down. And I feel like usually people say, well, you got to win on third down. That's obvious, right? It's the money down. If you don't convert, you're coming off the field. But for Notre Dame to have any chance to move this ball against the Ohio State defense, they have to win on first down. They can't be moving backwards. We talked about how the Ohio State D-line is so good at getting sacks or registering TFLs. For Notre Dame, I'm not saying you got to get like 5 yards on first down, but get 2, get 3. Just stay on schedule there and give yourself a chance on third down. And then on top of that, they're going to have to hit on those explosive plays that we talked about earlier, because those drives are going to be hard to sustain going up against a defense like this. So if you've got a chance to hit them deep, maybe it's on a 3rd and 1. Maybe it's a situation where Ohio State is selling out to stop quarterback power, something that Notre Dame has used time and time again in short yardage situations. And if Ohio State starts cheating up a little bit, maybe that's the time to take the shot deep and try to take advantage of Ohio State when they're being extra aggressive. But there's going to be a few moments in this game where Notre Dame is going to try to take a shot, and they're going to have to convert on those opportunities if they want to put some points up on the board.
You're exactly right. It's one of those areas where I think Notre Dame is going to have one of those game plans that might shock people, and they may find a way to have success on first down. I'm not trying to say that they won't do things that will be successful. I'm not even going to be a person that says, oh, they're not going to score. Notre Dame's a good football team. They earned the right to get here. The last thing I kind of think for Ohio State here is special teams. You got to be very successful. Notre Dame is good situationally in football, and we've seen them, I think it was against Georgia, score on a kickoff return. Special teams in this game is going to be one of those things that can win a game or lose a game at the end of the day. In Ohio State special teams, the kicking game has been spotty. Jaden Fielding missed a couple kicks against Michigan, which people are still really upset about, but he's grown since then. Punting, the punter's been very good. I think last week he flipped the field numerous times. The Ohio State has to win special teams, be efficient, be sound, and don't go crazy. Just do your job, keep the thing simple, and things will be fine.
Yeah, on the Notre Dame side, special teams has been a big reason why they're here. They ran like 4 different fake punts during the regular season, and people are like, why are you running a fake punt against Virginia? And it's like, well, they have more in the bag, and they just would bring it out at different points. They haven't run a true fake in this playoffs yet. They almost did against Indiana, but then Indiana called the timeout. And they did that one play where they ran out their punt team, and then took everyone off the field, and then ran out their offense, and then baited Georgia into an offsides. Like, it's those little things, those aggressive moments in the game that could end up being the difference. And I think that Marcus Freeman and Marty Biaggi, the special teams coordinator, have at least one more trick up their sleeve.
Tyler, we've reached a part of the show where people have been wondering, what is our score prediction? Who do we have winning the game? And in this game, to me, I think Will Howard has shown throughout the previous 15 games that he knows how to lead Ohio State's offense. He's very efficient, one of the most efficient passers in the country. He's throwing to future NFL receivers in Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Buka, and Carnell Tate. The running game is doing enough every single game to make people respect them and realize you can't take your eyes off of Judkins or Henderson, or they might quickly pound you up the middle or take a 75 yards to the house. The Buckeyes defense is a reason why I believe so much in this team in this game. Ohio State's defense, led by Cody Simon and Caleb Downs back there in the safety section of the defense, they've been great. They've been phenomenal. And this defense is one that all season long, I've been thinking in my head, defense wins championships. Defense wins championships. And Ohio State, at the middle of the season, they had a championship-level defense, and they've ratcheted that thing up as the season progressed. I got Ohio State winning this one 24-13. And at the end of the day, Ryan Day, in his second national championship game that he's coached in his career at Ohio State, he is lifting up that national championship trophy and bringing that thing back to Columbus.
So we have the same winning total, but I've got Notre Dame winning 24-21. I do expect this to be a low-scoring game, and 24 points is certainly a lot, but I think Notre Dame's offense is going to get some help from the defense. I think they're going to come up with a timely turnover, give the offense great field position, or maybe it's a special teams play because Notre Dame's special teams unit have been huge. It could be a big return or something exotic like a fake punt or some trickeration, maybe a reverse on a kickoff. But I just feel like Notre Dame is going to keep this game tight into the fourth quarter. That's going to be the message. Just keep it a game until the fourth quarter. And when that happens, if they get down and it's just 15 minutes left in the game and it could go either way, I feel like in that moment, Notre Dame has been in that situation before and they're going to find a way to pull it out. And I feel like the pressure on Ohio State will eventually cause them to fold late. Again, I have a ton of respect for Ohio State. I think that they are the more talented team, but for one night, all Notre Dame has to do is just be the better team. And I think that they're able to get it done. Marcus Freeman is a big reason why I feel that way. I just think that this team is playing on a different level right now. And if they can just get to the fourth quarter, get a bounce go their way. And look, I've been waiting for a Notre Dame national championship my entire life. There's a 35-year drought. And whenever that day comes, whenever Notre Dame finally wins a national championship, I want to be on the right side of history. So I'm taking the Irish 24-21.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. I've been on the side of winning. I have seen losses. Those losses hurt. Those wins are a whole lot more fun. But Tyler, you got the Irish. I got Ohio State. Everyone listening to this or maybe watching this, who do you think is going to win the game? Let us know in the comment section on this video right there on the YouTube and get into a little argument before the game on Monday night. Tyler, I really enjoyed this, man. Where can people follow you on Twitter and check out the show?
You can follow the show at Locked On Irish on Twitter or follow me at Tyler Wojciak. Like you, we're doing new episodes every single day of the week leading up to this game. Have been doing it for a while now. And at this point, like, I'm done talking about it, man. Let's just play ball.
I'm with you guys. You can follow me on Twitter at jsteven07, Locked On Buckeyes, just like Locked On Irish. They're both on YouTube and wherever you get your fine podcast. I really enjoyed this crossover with Tyler Wojciak of Locked On Irish. This is a crossover that's going to be a memorable one. We're on opposite sides of this thing, and we're going to be either celebrating or a little upset at the end of the night on Monday night. This has been Locked On Crossover with Locked On Buckeyes and Locked On Irish ahead of the College Football Playoff National Championship game between Ohio State and Notre Dame.